Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome, welcome. Good to see you all. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our final week with Being Myself, this awesome gem by Rupert Spira. It's just been such a joy to be part of this book study, to facilitate this and co-host it and host it. And we're in our final week, chapter 13. And it's titled The Divine Name. And our co-host this week is the lovely Cindy Good. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone.
So just a little background with Cindy. She and Rana are both in several of our programs for the Teachers of God Foundation. And Cindy has been just amazing facilitator and editor and publisher of our ebook in the Living in Oneness experience. And it's just amazing. She has worked just tirelessly with joy and inspiration and all these things. I just want to say thank you, Cindy, for being such an inspiration to all of us at the Teachers of God Foundation and the Living in Oneness group that you've been helping with. So thank you for that. And thank you for facilitating as our co-host today.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill. It's such a joy to do it and to be of service. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we're in our last chapter, and Cindy, where do you want to start with chapter 13?
Well, Bill, I just loved that first paragraph that talks about the knowledge of I am, or the feeling of being myself, is a hint of the beloved. It is the perfume of God's presence in the heart. To give oneself entirely to the I am is to lose oneself to God in God's presence. This loss of one's apparent self in God's presence to the ultimate surrender. And I'm brought to this place when I read that of Rupert talks about two approaches to the dissolution of the apparent separate self. One is the path of self-inquiry, investigating yourself, and you turn your attention away from the content of experience to who am I really? But the other one is a path of surrender. So he mentions this in this first paragraph, and he talks about the highest form being surrender, prayer, devotion, and expanding ourselves or losing ourselves in God's presence, which is that perfume of God's presence in the heart. And he mentioned it in that first video of this book club. I went back and listened because I remember he mentioned it. And somebody asked the question, is if self-inquiry necessary to, find way to the self? And he said, some investigation into the nature of self or mind is necessary, but complete surrender to God's being is enough. So I love that it's looped back on this last paragraph into complete surrender, the essence of devotion, prayer, and surrender. Right. So just really love that.
Yeah. What I like about what you just said, from what he said, is that it gives the understanding that the road to God doesn't necessarily require the name of God. It doesn't necessarily require a religious or even a spiritual understanding if the devotion of surrender is full, is 100%.
Yes.
So
100%.
So you don't have to, it's like you don't have to have some kind of a spiritual teacher or a doctrine or a philosophy. You just need to have that surrender experience to to be transported or to be transmuted or to have that direct experience of what God is.
I know it's like the way the devotee, if I could call it that way, which seems a separate self, but the devotee almost is completely loses itself in the beloved.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what he says in that first line that you read is the being myself. And all of us can just pause right here. We can pause right here and give attention to being myself, right? There's no words there. It's just it's an acknowledgement. It's an awareness of being myself. That's super clear and easy for all of us. And being myself, just that moment of recognition that all of us just had, if we paused, is a hint of the beloved. It happens in a nanosecond. It happens so fast that most of us miss it. Right? We just totally go to the body self objective, to the priorities of this bodysuit, and we miss that hint that is right in the pause of acknowledging self, being myself, and not the personal self, not the bodysuit, but the awareness, the I am presence. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's subtle, but it's more real than real. It's more real than anything physical.
It is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So what else do we have?
Well, I that really took me for that whole page, and then it started talking about the I, and I'm flipping over to page 114 because it begins all of this exploration of the name I is the first form of God, the divine name, and it moves into, before it's uttered, it's a portal through which manifestation is ushered. And it's also the portal through which the separate self reclaims its freedom from the tyranny of experience. It says, I am the door. And I can't help but think of, I'm going to jump to living in oneness, but your great diagram of the door.
Yes. The door from God is, the door from is to I am is the door from infinite to the finite, or from the eternal to time. And that door idea came from Jenny, what was her name? Annika. Annika. She's an artist who was one of our co-hosts for many years, or for many book studies. It's Annika, I forget her last name. Jenny, what was it? Anyway, she drew, as an artist, she drew for us for one of the book studies that I am doorway, because Rupert was speaking about it in one of his other publications. So it's not an original idea for Bill. I copied it from Annika. Forgive me, Annika, but she gets all the credit. Yeah. Annika Burgess. Yes, she's from Amsterdam. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and if you think about it, it's just what Rupert just said when he said if God were to give himself a name, he would call himself I, and I like to take the pronouns out. If God were to give itself a name, it would call itself I. And I don't know if some of you might have been in that webinar of Rupert a few weeks ago, where a woman kind of called Rupert out on using the pronouns. He goes, it's just my Christian background. Please forgive me. It's nothing personal. He just has a habit, he has that traditional sense of calling God a him. I like to call it or him a her because I like to bridge the gender gap and allow everything, everyone's in everyone's the same, and the pronouns are a little distracting, at least for me. Even though I'm a male, I like to mix it up and call it a her, call God a she or an it. So
I remember that. That was great.
yeah. So that's just a thing I have. But Rupert also, he got called out for it, and he is who he is. The rest of this page 114. What else did you get in this?
I was intrigued by, he said, know that each of our individual names is one of the many names of God's infinite being. That is why it is called a Christian name. It is the name of Christ in us.
Yes. Yeah, I did like it. It's one of the few times that you hear Rupert use the word Christ in his talks. He normally doesn't, because it's sort of it can be a loaded word, and at the same time, I also underline that it says that's why a Christian, know that each of us. Now follow this a little bit. The I is the divine name, and it says in that first paragraph at the top of page 115 that God has given us its name to remind us that our self is his self or itself, infinite, intimate, impersonal being, the only self there is, the self of all selves, the being in all existence. Know that each of our individual names, so if you take your individual name, Cindy or Bill or Susan or Jean or Marta, and if you take your individual name and it's one of the many names of God's infinite being.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Bill God, Cindy God.
Yeah. Hey.
Now you probably don't want to go out in public and say, hi, I'm Gene, I'm God Gene or God Bill, right? You probably don't want to do that. But anyway.
I've never heard that. I just loved it. I loved
know,
it.
because no one's left out. No names are left out. You could also say God cat, God horse, God tree, because everything is really God, is what God is.
Yeah.
Let's go back to page 114 for just a minute, because on the third paragraph from the top, it says, Rupert says, I is the logos or word, which before it is uttered is God's unmanifest intelligence. You said that, but the Bible has in Genesis a verse that I like to remember. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Oh.
And then in the New Testament, it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us for a while. And I like to take that word logos, or the word, and really call it for what it is. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's a vibrational frequency. It's not really a word that's stated. It's a vibrational frequency that is known. So the vibrational frequency of words, words are just a vibrational frequency of what God is.
Mm. And Rick just said in the chat, consciousness, awareness.
Yes. Thank you, Rick. And then if you go down to the next paragraph, and he talks about Krishnamurti, he says Krishnamurti referred to this as the first and the last freedom. The name, or the God's unmanifest intelligence. Once named, it is the portal through which manifestation is ushered. So once it's named as I am, Krishnamurti says that it's the first and the last freedom. It is the portal through which, and this is the door, it's the portal through which the separate self reclaims its freedom from the tyranny of experience. That's why for all of us, when we rest in I am, it's such a sweet resting place and it's just because when we don't add our name to it, if we don't add the personal self-identity to it, it just becomes an experience. It becomes something that's deeper. That's and here he's saying why it's deeper, because it's the portal through which the separate self reclaims freedom from the tyranny of experience, and the same portal through which infinite being travels in the opposite direction as it passes out of eternity into time, foregoing its freedom in favor of the experience, the bodysuit experience.
Oh, it's the return to the natural condition of our inherent peace and joy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy that, that Christians got it wrong and everybody's included, right? And my apologies to you if you're Christians. I used to be, so I have authority to say it's okay to not be that anymore. At least by my authority, I give myself permission. And you, there's no consequences for that blasphemy. It says, as Jesus says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, and this has got totally screwed up. If anyone enters by me, and what he meant was by I am, if anyone enters by I am, he will be saved, or he will awaken. That's what being saved means. You wake up to the realization of your true essential self. The name I is the doorway through which the finite mind passes as it is divested of the limitations it acquires from experience and is returned to its natural condition of peace and joy. Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah. I love the last few pages of this book. He really didn't, kind of go weak. He kept it really direct.
He went extremely direct.
Yeah. What else do you see on page, do you see anything else on 115 that you would like to highlight?
I love the last paragraph. We cannot really rest in being because we already are being. So rest knowingly as your essential being, independent of whatever experience may be present. It's like giving up my personal being and just allowing the shining being of what I am to shine through in the midst of all experience.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
And I have to share that I did go to Rupert's Surrender or Essence of Prayer conference. And he said getting transparent and empty vehicle for the sharing. And he read this amazing prayer of the Chalice. Do you mind if I read it here? It's a real short one.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Father, to thee I raise my whole being, a vessel emptied of self. Accept, Lord, this my emptiness, and so fill me with thyself, thy light, thy love, thy life, that these thy precious gifts may radiate through me and overflow the chalice of my heart into the hearts of all with whom I come in contact this day, revealing onto them the beauty of thy joy and wholeness and the serenity of thy peace, which nothing can destroy. He said, make this your prayer.
Nice. So nice. And what I like, if you go to this page, you go to the couple of paragraphs on this page, he says twice, I think he says twice on page 115, do not allow the name I to become personalized by thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. And when he says do not allow, I took exception to that when I was in his webinar, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I said, who are we saying do not to? If we don't make choices, who are we saying do not to? And so Rupert is speaking directly to I am. He's speaking directly to awakening consciousness, and I know that's not true, because conscious doesn't awaken, but it's awakening awareness is what I call it, as we are beginning to gradually divest the identity as the body mind, as the personal self. I call that awakening awareness. And Rupert is speaking to that one that knows itself and is beginning to awaken in whatever gradual way it takes place. We don't know, but that do not allow. Whenever Rupert or a teacher is, like Francis says it, Muji says it, Rupert says it, whenever a teacher says do not do this, he's speaking, she are speaking to consciousness. They're not speaking to the Bill. Bill thinks he's making a choice. It's not happening right here.
Only consciousness is here.
Yes. So good. I'm going to ask him that question in an interview. We're going to Garrison to interview him in about a week. And I'm going to ask him that question in the interview and see what comes out of that, because we're going to be doing it with a cameraman. So let's move to page 116.
Perfect. Our own being is closer to us than our own breath. Closer to us than our most intimate thoughts and feelings. In fact, it is not close to us. It is us. And that speaks to me of that recognition constantly, what he says. It's just a recognition of who we truly are.
I like hearing Rupert say statements like that are also what A Course in Miracles says. I like hearing the statement made by someone who knows nothing about the Course, also reinforcing something that I've read from the Course, that it's but a recognition of what we are always. Yep. Let's see, this is, I'm just going to look up here and see what's on the board. Thank you for making your comments on the board, everyone. There's a comment from Rick. Generally, beliefs will lead one astray. Rely on experience to take you home. Yes, as soon as someone uses the word I believe, you know that this is going nowhere.
He said that back in the Nature of Consciousness. There's two ways: way of experience or way of belief. And we don't know anything.
Yes. Yeah. And it's also very freeing to come to the understanding. It's only by Rupert that I can say what I say, but when I say I know, that there's a knowing that, and this has come from Rupert's pointing in that, don't believe what I say. Don't believe me. Don't believe Rupert. Don't believe Bill or Cindy or Susan or Jean. Don't believe what do you know? What can you know for sure? Well, you can know for sure when you investigate what is it that's aware of this experience. That's how you can know for sure. So it's no longer based on a belief, a concept, an idea that you read in someone's book. It's your own direct experience.
And this direct experience then kind of moves into an understanding and provides clarity.
Yeah. It says at the top of page 116, where you read that our own being is closer to us than our breath. Pause right there for just a minute, because you are aware of the breath. So you are prior to breathing. Closer to us than our breath. And then he says, in fact, he says closer to us than our most intimate thoughts and feelings. In fact, it is not close to us, it is us, just as you said. And then he said, we cannot find it, we can only be it knowingly. We cannot lose it, we can only overlook it. Rest as that. Do not take refuge in teaching a situation or a relationship. Take refuge in yourself. And I would say in the self, in the I am presence.
He really is bringing us constantly back to the I am. Yeah. Don't go out there, come back within.
Yeah. He says, if we go deeply into the sense of I in the fourth paragraph, if we go deeply into that sense of I, we will either gradually or suddenly be divested of the limitations we have acquired from experience. So if we go deeply into that sense of I, and let's not skip over it, let's just pause and go in deeply into that sense of I. We only need to bring attention to the sense of I, the sense of I am, to have the experience that's being described here. It's just as we pause, we rest as awareness, we rest as I am, and it doesn't need to happen later. It happens right now. Every right now.
It's instant. We're here. I love it.
Yeah. And for that, he says, and that for which we were in search will be revealed as our very own self.
And then he ends that off with such beautiful Ramana Maharshi. When the I is divested of the I, only I remains. And we cease to speak.
Nice. Mm. And then he talks about going to boarding school when he was in England. I thought that was interesting about Rupert. I looked up boarding schools because we don't know things about boarding schools in the U.S., but it seems to be pretty common in UK. I think there's still a lot of, I think it's a normal way of education to send. I used to think it was punishment. Wow. Why do they everybody send their kids off? But it seems to be, it's just a cultural thing. And it's quite, that would be pretty cool to go to school with all guys, I think. And of course, in my experience, it sounds like trouble. It sounds like sounds like trouble asking for trouble.
I think it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boarding schools in Australia. It's the form of education as well. So it's the English way of being.
Yeah. So let's move down on page 117 to the after after Rupert's looks like a hymn. As
Yeah.
much as I love the hymn, yeah, it was a hymn. Little did I realize at the time that the self in myself is God's being. The simple feeling of being, or the knowledge I am, is God's presence in us as us. And when I hear hymns and stuff like that, I like to get that God out of here, because that's my old God, and I
That's like a being out there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
I used to sing those hymns, and that makes me think of that I was singing to a God out there, right? He says, do not, here's another one of his do nots. And of course, when he says the do not allow, he's speaking to I am. Do not allow I to become personal or finite. So how does one do that? Well, he gives the how. Second, halfway through this paragraph, he says, pause and investigate. So that's what that becomes our new default, pausing and moving attention to the I am. That's really all that's required. Pause and investigate. Hold up the mirror of understanding. The personal self cannot stand the bright light of awareness. Right? The
That's
personal
right.
self cannot stand. So as we rest as awareness, we're shining the bright light of awareness on experience, and don't touch it. Just stay right there.
Comes to an ending. Don't log in. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
He says, allow it to come to an end in understanding. And was it here that he talked about? He says, the personal self. Now, where was it that he was talking about something gradual? Was it the page before?
Page before, if we go deeply into the sense of I, we will either gradually or suddenly be divested of the limitations that we have acquired from experience. Yeah.
So if it doesn't happen like overnight or on chapter 4 or 5, stay with it. It's gradual for most of us. And Rupert is not the kindergarten class or even high school. His language, and Rupert and Francis Lucille, Jean Klein, they're the advanced university class.
Yeah.
This is not for you may not get it on the first read like most of us. So anything else on page 117? And
I love at the end where he says, when you're in this being knowingly as I, your whole being, it removes the fears and desires and anxieties, and you gather more the qualities of love, joy, justice, and compassion. And I'm going to just jump in with another little prayer that he did at that Essence of Prayer retreat, where it was titled, My Whole Being is Yourself. Oh, my Lord, my whole being is yourself, and this mind which has been given to me is your consort. The life force, breath, and energy which you have given me are your attendants. My body is the temple in which I worship you. Whatever I eat or wear or do is all part of the worship which I keep on performing at this temple. Even when this body goes to sleep at night, I feel I am in union with you. Whenever I walk, I feel I am going on pilgrimage to you. Whatever I speak is all in praise of you. So whatever I do in this world in any way is all aimed at you. In fact, there is no duality in this life of union with yourself.
Mm. Yeah. When you put that in the right reference, it used to be we would have, or at least I used to have these prayers to God. When I put it in the right reference of speaking those words to I am that I am, speaking those words to love as love itself, and there's no separation, there's no individual, it's only presence. That comes so much closer to an experience that it's just it's I can accept the word worship when I'm
Yes.
not worshiping an idol, when I'm not worshiping something that's out there, or some this thing called God. When you bring it in as I am, as presence, as love, a word that comes closer to a direct universal experience. Yeah.
The wholeness of being. It's beautiful.
Mm.
So we go to page 118 and
But before we do,
before that,
before we do, Judy Yeoman asked, is it possible to get a copy of the prayer of Chalice, of the Chalice? And I would say that if Cindy would just send me the email, when we send out the replay, we'll include those files for everyone, so that you can have both of these prayers, because we're sending out, we'll send out an email after and just include that. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm on page 118, and I had the opportunity to go on to one of the weekday areas with Rupert and ask a question on chapter 13. And I asked about, it says, every time in this paragraph we think or say I, we may follow it like Ariadne's golden thread to the luminous being that not only lies behind all experience, although it is often found there first, but shines in the midst of all experience and is all experience. And I asked about that, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Ariadne's golden thread, because it is an actual Greek myth that talks about, I'm just looking it up in a book that one of his assistants gave me to read. He goes, Ariadne gave a ball of golden thread, which is teaching, an analogy for a teaching of ancient wisdom, to Thosis, which is our personality, to be unwound as he traveled through the tortuously winding paths of the gloomy labyrinth of Crete, into which he had been sent by the king, but in reality to slay the Minotaur, which is our ignorance, belief in our personal body self, and dwelt at its center. So he said, Ariadne's golden thread is the thought, the divine I. It's the thread that leads you out of the maze. Take it and follow it to its referent, that which it refers to, freedom, peace, and safety.
Cool. I have a question mark by that, Ariadne's golden thread. Thank you for answering.
Well, he answered it for
Yeah.
me, and I just noted this down. I knew he was going to do chapter 30, but I love that. And then I've got this fun thing, Bill, that happened after. I had asked this question in the call, and Rupert had answered. And I went out for a walk after, as you do, and contemplate what he said. And I was with a friend, and she said, oh, you wouldn't believe what's over top of our head. It's a luminous thing that's occurring. And I just took my camera and took a picture, and I want to show you. And there's a golden thread that came through my head. And it's just called a 22-degree halo. It was right after I asked the question to Rupert. And so I sent it to Neil, Rupert's assistant, and he said, come on the call and talk to Rupert and show him the picture. So I did. And the following day, and Rupert came back and said to me, a nice synchronistic confirmation from the universe about the golden thread of the divine eye.
Nice. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, kind of fun.
Yeah. Road signs.
Road signs. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. There's a comment on the thread at 1224 from Doug Carey. Do not allow. I think Rupert is speaking to the apparent personal self that he says we need to honor as if it has choice. If we're aware of pure presence, we already are not personalized. Yeah, that's always an open question for me. But I did ask Rupert the question. I said, who are we saying do not to? And then he gave the reference that the personal self really makes no choice, but the impulse of consciousness moves the activity of the personal self, and it thinks it makes decisions. So it's just a movement. It's a movement that occurs. And I don't know how the do not do this, do not allow influences consciousness to have the impulse, but I don't need to know anymore. That's enough for me.
That's enough. Yeah.
That's enough for me. I just need to ask the question because I need the reference for, okay, if there's no chooser, and Jenny, Bill will remember this. Bill has a problem with, or had a problem with not having choices. Not who is it that makes choices? Well, and Francis Lucille is very clear that we don't make choices. We're just, things are just occurring. And
yes.
And I had this repeat question of who's making the choices if I'm not making these choices. And Rupert got me closer to that with the idea that, consciousness just moves. And then Bill takes credit for the movement.
And it moves you or it moves us in the way that we can hear it as well. It might be different. It's different ways for different people, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what were you saying else on page 118?
Okay. To feel that our essential being is shared with all others is love.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why when, that's what brings compassion. That's what calls us to care about other people's experiences. That's the thing I think that pulls us to wanting connection with other people, because it brings us to the recognition of our shared being. And I like this, the recognition, the second to the last paragraph, the recognition that we share our being with all things places us in harmony with nature and will thereby restore humanity's relationship with the planet. Yeah.
And it's that beautiful reinforcement of this consciousness only model has the potential to change the world.
Yeah.
And it gives us hope, Eve is saying in the chat. Yeah.
William Price, good to see you. There is an old Sufi saying, this cannot be taught. It can only be caught. Good one. That's a good one. I like that, William. Thank you. Hey. And there's a question from Rana on page 116, paragraph 3. Can awareness be unhappy? Can awareness be unhappy? Paragraph 3. If we are unhappy or feel any sense of lack, instead of seeking to fulfill our longing, we should seek the source of our longing. The source of our longing is I, myself, the one who is unhappy. The source of our longing is I, myself. Well, the answer is yes and no. There's only one being, and so all seeming unhappiness, sadness, frustration, pleasure, all things come from the same awareness. So can awareness be unhappy in the absolute level? No. In the finite experience, it can only be coming from awareness, right? So I guess it's yes and no. Or no and yes. Jenny says, Judy, he says, allow thoughts to be exactly as they are, but we can notice them and notice whether they depend on the belief in being a separate entity or not. But it's just noticing, not trying to change anything. Thank you, Jenny, for that. I noticed Jenny is wearing, she doesn't have her headset on. She's sitting on a sofa. You're looking good over there, Jenny. Thank you for your comments here too. And then Jenny says that normal for well-off people. Let's see, what is that answering? You see what that's answering? She says normal.
Boarding school, Bill.
What?
Boarding school.
Oh, boarding school is normal for well-off people.
School.
Okay, good. Thank you, Susan. It's normal for well-off people. Many who go there think of it as punishment. That's funny. Yeah, good. Let's see, what else do we have here? Do we have anything else in this chapter?
Well, we're on the last page on 119.
Okay, let's see what the last page says, and then we'll wrap it up in chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So the knowledge of being must, as such, be the foundation of any truly civilized society. All that is necessary is to go to the feeling of being myself, or the thought I am, and sink deeply into it. All that we truly long for lives there, in the depths of our being. If we turn towards it, it will take us into itself. So beautiful.
You know, when I read this again this morning, I could only think of Putin doing this.
I know. Me too.
Really, I could only think of what would happen, Putin, if you just go into this place of being myself, of I am. I invite you there and find the love and the presence of your essential self. Just find the love and the presence that you are, because you are here too. Yeah, it's what drew me to that. It's my thoughts just went right to him, and I brought him into that space, or brought who I think he is into that space of recognition. And that's I don't think that's a weird. I think that's the power. That's the presence of I am that's initiating a ripple in consciousness. That's of course, that's my take on it.
Absolutely my take too. And as soon as I read that this morning again, I had to shut my eyes and just go there and really bless everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Susan, for putting that link. I see that Susan put the link for that prayer in the chat.
Oh, great.
And then she put the, if you wanted to copy and paste it, she put the words in there. Let's see what else. Jenny said, what happens is that Rupert didn't make, oh, this must be the choice thing. What happens is that Rupert, this is at 12:44, so about 6 minutes ago. What happens is that Rupert didn't make the choice to say, do not. Oh boy. Bill didn't make the choice to hear it. Both just happened. Oh, this is funny. But if Rupert hadn't said do not, then it's less likely that a thought would arise in Bill remembering not to do it. All of it, it just happens as the movement of consciousness.
Love that.
Oh boy. That's funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. Eve says on page 118, gives us hope to restore this lovely planet. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Eve. Yeah, it's so true. Thanks, Jenny. I have wrestled with this choice thing a lot. Yeah, that's so great. I love what you said there, Jenny. Thank you for that. It's funny, but it's true. So true. We probably need to come to UK and interview Jenny. She has such good reflection on these things. Any other questions that anyone has? We finished Being Myself. Thank you all for your involvement and being part of this book study. I totally love these book studies. They're just they're so refreshing. And thank you all, everyone that has been a co-host for this Being Myself book study and ongoing. I just really appreciate your involvement. This wouldn't be what it is if we didn't include all of us in it. And I really appreciate everyone making it such a great experience for all of us.
And thank you, Bill, for taking the time and doing these book studies that bring us all into a direct experience of Rupert's work and whomever you choose next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, speaking of whom we're going to choose next, we are going to follow this book a second time. And I looked at it. This is the book that we did a few years ago. And at the time, we had about 18 sessions. We're going to trim it down to about 12 sessions. And if you're a co-host now, or you've not been a co-host and you'd like to be a co-host to go through, this is Jean Klein. And this is a book of essays compiled by Emma Edwards. It's really it's an easy read. Jenny has a great introduction. She has a great commentary about Jean Klein. She really knows his background very well. And I'm going to, so maybe Jenny will give us a little background as she did the last time we did. And if you would be interested in being a co-host for the Jean Klein book study, just email me at billfreeonline@gmail.com and I'll put you in the rotation and we'll set up a rotation of co-hosts, because I like to flavor of different co-hosts. Just makes it, you just don't know what to expect, and it's always fresh and alive and includes everyone. So I like that part of it. And Lisa, my wife Lisa Natoli, was reading something from Steve Bodian. He's one of our speakers for the conference coming up, the Know Thyself conference in April. We have nearly 1,200 people registered for that already, and it's a month away. I think there's going to be many thousands of people coming. It's free. So you can go to billfree.com, or you can go to teachersofgod.org, or you can go to purepresenceconferences.com. You can register for free in any of those places. And one of the things that I was saying was that Lisa was reading something about Steve Bodian, who's one of our speakers. He was a student of Jean Klein and good friends with Francis Lucille. Well, Steve Bodian writes great articles. He has the School of Awakening, but he also wrote articles back in the early 2000s. And he wrote an article of an interview that he did with Jean Klein back in 1988. And I just finished reading the interview. It's a really great article. I'm going to include this in an email to each of you so that you can read this interview that Steve Bodian had with Jean Klein. It's quite good. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. That coupled with Jenny Beal's background of Jean Klein, I think will give you a much better experience of this book that we'll do together. And what I thought that we would do is we'll start our next book, this book, April 13th. It'll run for 12 weeks on Wednesdays at 12 noon Eastern, and it'll go to June 29th. And hopefully You Are the Happiness That You Seek will be published, and we'll start sometime after that. But if you would like to participate as a co-host, please write to me. And Cindy, do you have any final words before we close this book study? And then Susan has something she wants to share.
Okay. I just think that my only final words is how beautiful it is to be together, going through this together and having an understanding with all these gorgeous people and yourself. And it makes such a difference for this to have a direct experience.
Yes, it does. I love it. I look forward to every Wednesday. I set wherever I'm traveling. I try to pick up a computer if I'm moving around. This is like oxygen. It's important, right? Thank you, Cindy, and thank you everyone for your comments and your participation in this book study. This is for all of us. It's just my gratitude that we can do this as a community. And thank you all. Susan.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks very much. At the start of the year, we began the Awareness podcast, and Bill and I are resident hosts along with Cindy Krupp and Jackie Greggs. And in April, there are 5 Fridays, so we have an additional podcast episode. So we decided to make it an Ask the Hosts show. And we're recording it on Saturday, this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we wanted to invite anybody from this book group who would like to come along to ask us anything they like. So I'm going to post the link. It's by Zoom meeting like this. So I'm posting the link. And we'd love to see you there if you want to come and spend an hour with us and ask questions. Thanks very much.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we have a couple minutes left. Josephine has her hand up. Josephine. Can you unmute your mic? Are you there? Hello?
Yeah, my mic is on.
Okay, go ahead. We hear you now.
Oh, okay. I had bought the I Am book by Rupert. What is the book for April 13th?
The April 13th is I Am by Jean Klein. It's a book of essays. And
by Jean Klein. Okay.
Yeah, this is Jean Klein. And it's a book of essays, and this will be our next book. The I Am for Rupert is quite good. It's a good sort of a devotional. Meditation. Yeah. Yes. It's a good meditation devotional book. We won't be doing that one. That's more of a self devotional in my mind. But is that the if you get a copy of that book, you can or not, you can join us whether you have the book or not. But to be a co-host or even to enjoy the experience, I think to have the book would be great.
And you're
Yeah.
sending an email for everyone who registers?
Yep. I'm sending an email to everyone that registered for this. There's probably 12 or 1,300 people that were registered. Everyone will get an invitation to re-register, and we'll be sending this interview with Steve Bodie and Jean Klein out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you, everyone. We're at the end of our time. Thank you, Cindy. Love you all.
Thank you. Love you all.
Thank you.
We'll see
Thank
you in
you.
June. We'll see you in April 13th.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.